I received a question, actually I received a request for a video uh, in the comment section under one of my past videos. There was a comment left where they requested a video on something called VO2MAX. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to talk about VO2MAX. VO2MAX is a physiological measurement. It's of great importance to anybody involved in exercise, and also it's greatly involved in health. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of scientific researchers who will tell you that the level of your VO2 max is a large determinant of your longevity. In other words, the greater or the higher your VO2 max, the greater the chance of living a longer and healthier life, with a special focus on what they call health span. Now, you have something called lifespan and you have something called health span. A lifespan is basically just how long you live. Health span, which is more under your control. The lifespan is partially under your control. About 20% of it is related to genetic factors. What I mean by that is people that, for example, live to over 100 years of age, they live to make it to 100 or over. Supercentenarians are something like 109 years of age. These people have genetic differences in their cells. They have a greatly increased ability to repair DNA. DNA is the blueprint of the cell, and they don't do anything special, as I've mentioned in past videos. They don't particularly exercise. They don't eat a certain way. They don't follow calorie-restricted diets. They do have certain hormonal differences. A lot of them are resistant to insulin-like growth factor 1. But the main reason they live that long is because of their genetic mutation that allows them to have a greater ability to repair DNA. Now, that's related to lifespan. Health span is how healthy you are to the end of your life. In other words, everybody dies eventually, but the ideal situation is to stay as healthy as long as possible, not to fall prey to the primary diseases that shorten the average person's life. The two main being, number one is cardiovascular disease, and number two is cancer. Cardiovascular disease and cancer are both largely controllable by how you live your life. In other words, diet and exercise, for example. You to a large extent, you can control cardiovascular disease or prevent it through diet and exercise. Cancer is also, there are certain genetic tendencies to have certain cancers, but you can take preemptive measures, again related to diet and exercise, that will help you prevent the development of cancer that would normally arise because of your, let's say, genetic tendency. So health span is living a longer life in a healthier state, and VO2 max is a large determinant of health span. Now, first of all, what is VO2 max? VO2 max, if you break it down, V stands for volume. That's the amount. The volume, O2 stands for oxygen, and max is maximum. So VO2 max, very simply, refers to the maximum amount of oxygen your body can absorb and use especially during activity. Now, the higher I'll get to it a little bit later, but as you might expect, elite endurance athletes often have extremely high VO2 max rates. As a matter of fact, I wrote an article years ago about Lance Armstrong, who was the defrocked 7-time Tour de France cyclist. He was a world-famous athlete. He claimed never to have used any performance-enhancing drugs. Later on, he admitted that he did. But what people overlook about Lance Armstrong is that even before he got into the let's say championship cycling mode, he was a prodigy as far as athletics go. He started doing long distance cycling at a very young age, so he had an unusually high VO2 max, which is very, very useful for long distance cycling. It means you could take in and utilize oxygen much more efficiently, which of course would be a tremendous advantage in any athletic endeavor, especially related to endurance. Lance Armstrong also related to his VO2 max. He had an ability not to build up as much lactic acid during hard cycling as other athletes. So what that meant, the acid portion of lactic acid produces muscle fatigue. So he was much less subject to fatigue, also related to his high VO2 max. So, so let's get into a little bit more. As I said, the high VO2 max is a good predictor of athletic performance, especially if you're a long distance endurance athlete, a long distance runner, long distance swimmer. But it's also a VO2 max, even if you're not an athlete. It's also reflective of your cardiorespiratory fitness. In other words, it's a good measure of what kind of shape your cardiovascular system is in. There's various tests to test VO2 max. For example, I have submaximal exercise tests. These are performed. What submaximal means is these tests are done or performed with a heart rate that's below maximum, and it's also done. The test is done below maximum exhaustion level, usually at a heart rate equal to 75 to 85% of maximum heart rate. It's a pretty good way to measure your VO2 max and your overall levels of heart and lung endurance. Specific submaximal exercise tests include what's called the Astron treadmill test, a 2.4 kilometer run test, and something called the multi-stage bleep test. Or you could do a simple walk-run test on a treadmill. Other possible VO2 max tests include the Cooper 1.5 walk-run test that was devised by Dr. Kenneth Cooper out of Texas, the Rockport 1 mile walk test, treadmill testing, and these are ways to test your VO2 max if you're interested in knowing exactly what it is. The VO2 max depends on a few factors. A lot of people will tell you that VO2 max is completely genetic. In other words, they'll say that the reason why elite endurance athletes are the way they are is because they have a naturally high VO2 max. There may be some truth to that, but I don't believe that's the main determinant of a VO2 max. The VO2 max depends on a couple of factors like how old you are. VO2 max tends to decline with age. People that, for example, do regular aerobic exercise will notice as they get older that their maximum heart rate is less than what it used to be. That's an indication of a lowering of VO2 max. For example, when I did my aerobic training years ago, I used to get my heart rate up to as much as 180, 190 beats per minute. These days, I'm lucky to get it to 140. We're talking about 20 years. 20 years ago, I got it up to about 170 maximum, maybe 180. My VO2 max was a lot higher back then. Now I do regular aerobic training, not a lot. I do about 30 minutes at a time. This is my way of trying to maintain VO2 max. It's very, very important. Gender, male or female. Men have higher VO2 maxes than women because they have greater body mass, just like they have 20% more muscle mass. And the average man is about 120% stronger than the average woman with even no training involved. I'm not going to get into the controversy about transgender people competing in sports, but those statistics should give you an idea of the fairness of transgender participation. Of course, your fitness level also determines a VO2 max. If you exercise regularly, if you do a lot of aerobic training, not a lot, but if you do it regularly, you'll have a better VO2 max number. A lot of athletes, I used to work with boxers who before a match would go up and train at elevated altitudes, because of the fact that the air is thinner, this lacks oxygen. And by training at the elevated altitudes, they were able to increase their natural red blood cell production, which also increased their VO2 max, with the net effect being when the actual boxing match came, they had more endurance. Now, that's a controversial thing. A lot of people say training in the mountains doesn't make much difference. But my personal observation is the boxers, these were professional fighters, the fighters that did work out at higher altitude seemed to have greater endurance when they fought championship matches. So how do you, let's talk a little bit, couple of statistics here. The average untrained healthy male has a VO2 max of approximately 35 to 40 milliliters per kilogram a minute. That means that's how much oxygen they take in per minute. The average untrained female has a VO2 max of 27 to 31 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Now, you can increase those scores with training, and as I said, they decrease with age. The degree of your ability to increase VO2 max varies with individuals. As I said, a guy like Lance Armstrong, because he started training at such an early age, he developed a very large VO2 max. What about athletes? In sports where endurance is important, for example, long-distance cycling, rowing, cross-country skiing, swimming, and long-distance running, those type of athletes have extremely high VO2 max. It's absolutely necessary to successfully compete in those sports. Elite male runners can consume up to 85 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram per minute. Now compare that to the average man who has only 35 milliliters per kilogram. Elite oarsmen measured in 1984 had VO2 max levels as also that were very high. And I remember reading that, this is years ago, but I remember reading that when they took measurements of VO2 max in elite athletes, I think it was at one of the Olympics, the athletes that had the highest VO2 max were cross-country skiers. They were almost like off the scale. They were like averaging 90 or something like that. Now, the real champions when it comes to VO2 max are animals. Okay, mice, swimming mice had a VO2 max of 140 milliliters per kilogram. That's greater than any elite human athlete. Thoroughbred horses have a VO2 max of about 193 milliliters per kilogram after 8 to 18 weeks of high-intensity training. Alaskan husky dogs running in the Iditarod Trail Sled Race, that's an extremely intense long-distance race held in Alaska, they show VO2 max as high as 240 milliliters per kilogram per minute. That's like way above even the greatest human athletes in the world. But the real record in animals for VO2 max is our pronghorn antelopes. They have VO2 max 300 milliliters per kilogram a minute. Compare that to the average man with a 35 milliliter per kilogram per minute VO2 max. So, and how do you actually increase your VO2 max? Again, as you get older, it's going to decline no matter what you do, but you can minimize the decline by doing certain types of exercise. Probably the best type of exercise, single exercise, that you could do to increase your VO2 max is high-intensity interval training. High-intensity interval training consists of doing several minutes of intense aerobic exercise where you get your heart rate up to, as high as you can get it. Like if you can get it to 70, 90% of maximum, you want to do that. You do that for, let's say, three minutes. In fact, let me see here. I have something here. Let me see if I could find it. I can't find it. It was a VO2 max program. But anyway, you want to get for about 3 minutes, you go real hard. Let's say you're on a stationary bike treadmill. You run as hard as you can to get your heart rate up to maximum. You do that for 3 minutes, and then you lower. You go slower for another 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and you get your heart rate down to maybe 60% of maximum heart rate, and then you bring it back up again, alternating. This is called high intensity interval training, and it's the best way to increase your VO2 max. Any type of aerobic training will increase the VO2 max. Can you increase VO2 max with resistance training, lifting weights? You can, but the only way to do it is you'd have to take very brief rest periods between sets. For example, Vince Garanda, the famous trainer, when I joined his gym many years ago, he put me on a program he called the 8x8, where you did one exercise for each muscle. You did it 8 sets, and you did it 8 reps. Now, that doesn't sound much, but here's the trick. You couldn't rest more than 15 seconds between each set. And let me tell you, that was very hard. When I heard 8 sets of 8, I said, oh, this is going to be easy as pie. But when I actually did it, I was huffing and puffing by the 3rd or 4th set. I could barely get to 8 reps by the 5th set because, it was almost like running. So if you train that way with extremely short rest periods between sets, you could probably increase your VO2 max with resistance training. Won't be as effective as high intensity interval aerobics, but you could still increase it. The bad part is by the brief rests also tend to inhibit strength and muscle size gains because your muscles need a certain amount of time to restore the energy supply, such as creatine phosphate. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes to actually restore muscle energetic systems. So if you train with minimal rest periods, you're not giving your body a chance to restore maximum energy. So you're not going to get the strongest muscle contractions. You won't be able to lift this heavier weight and so forth, so on and so forth. Let me see. A 2018 study in the journal Frontiers in Bioscience found that increasing your VO2 max can improve the delivery and use of oxygen by a body and maintain your health and physical wellness. Basically, VO2 max is a reflection of your cardiorespiratory fitness. It's a good reflection of what kind of cardiovascular shape you're in. So as your VO2 max increases, you're going to notice certain benefits. You're going to notice that you have much more endurance when you train muscular endurance. If you wanted to, you'll be able to train faster with much less rest between sets. Having a higher VO2 max, you'll notice decreased stress. You'll also notice an increase in your immune response. All of this comes from VO2 max. So I think that's about it for VO2 max. I think that really covers the waterfront. So again, to summarize the important points, the VO2 max, some of it is genetic, but it can be developed through exercise. The best type of exercise to increase your VO2 max is high-intensity interval training, minimal rest between sets if you're going to do resistance training. And also, another thing I didn't mention is that as you reduce your body fat through diet and exercise, the VO2 max tends to go up also. So just lowering your body fat level will also increase your VO2 max. And of course, you do that through diet and exercise. So I think that's about it. I really think that everybody should do some form of aerobic training because, exercise should be specific. When you lift weights, resistance training, the main goal is to develop increased muscular size and strength. When you should reserve cardiovascular training for aerobics, but to really be healthy, to increase the health span, as I mentioned earlier, you have to really combine both of them. I mean, the people that think that they can get away with doing only resistance training, even if they train very fast, yes, they'll get a certain amount of heart stimulation, and they might even increase their VO2 max a little bit, but it's nothing compared to the increase you can get from doing actual aerobic training. It's very important to exercise your heart and again, increased endurance, increased ability to take in oxygen by increasing your VO2 max will have an overlapping effect in your weight workouts, allowing you to train harder and longer with less muscle fatigue. So that's a reason to do exercise like aerobics to increase your VO2 max. So that's about all I'll say for this. If you want more information on nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research, supplement science, which supplements work, which ones don't. I'm not aligned with any supplement company. I'm going to give you the truth. Let the chips fall where they may be, as the adage says. I don't care. I'm going to tell you the truth. In fact, that's the whole point of Applied Metabolics. It's a beacon of truth in a sea of lies known as the internet. The internet has more bullshit than you could possibly imagine. But anyway, I also cover hormone therapy, as I said, women's health and fitness. Applied Metabolics covers more topics than any other digital newsletter. Well, I don't want to call it a news. It's not a newsletter. It's a publication. Other digital publications, they tend to focus on a couple of studies each month, maybe 2, 3, 4 studies a month, and they break it down, which is pretty interesting, but it's really minimal knowledge. It's only specific for those particular studies. The articles in Applied Metabolics are much more broad and of much far greater practical value. Everything you read in Applied Metabolics is applicable to your daily life, and it will improve your life. It'll improve your health span. It'll improve your health. It'll help you speed muscle and strength gains. In short, there's nothing I've seen on the internet, if I say so myself, that can equal the content of Applied Metabolics as far as useful information. Some of these other, I find it humorous, some of these other digital publications I've seen a lot of them, and I'm not going to say they're bad. They're pretty good. It's just that they're nothing compared to Applied Metabolics. They just don't have the depth of information. But some of these other digital publications, they have staffs of 30 people working for them. Applied Metabolics has one, me. Now, how can I compete against 30 people? Very simple. I have more experience than all 30 of those 30 people, more experience and probably more knowledge than all of those 30 people combined. I could say that even without knowing this, because I have over 6 decades, that's over 60 years of constant study and experience, and I strongly doubt that any of these people have even been alive that long, much less studying the literature that long or studying science that long. Plus, I have my own personal experience. I'm not an armchair philosopher. I was a competing bodybuilder. I know what works and what doesn't work. As a magazine writer for over 30 years, I interviewed all of the top elite male and female bodybuilders. I know all the tricks, all the secrets, if you want to call it that. They're all imparted in Applied Metabolics. So subscribe today at www.appliedmetabolics.com. I absolutely guarantee, no matter what your level of education or experience, you will learn something from every issue of Applied Metabolics. In fact, after reading it for about 6 months, you yourself will be an expert on nutrition and exercise. I'm telling you, it's like a home course without the boring parts. Because I know how to write. I've written for the public writing itself. I've been a professional writer for about 45 years. I've been writing for, how would it be? Writing for me, I guess it's over 50 years. So I know how to write for the public. I know how to translate technical terms. You won't need to have a medical dictionary handy to read Applied Metabolics like you would with some of those other digital publications, which read like they're PhD dissertations. I mean, it's good information, but unless you have a science background, you better have a medical dictionary available. You won't understand what they're talking about. I mean, they'll talk about stuff like VO2MAX without even explaining what VO2MAX is, assuming that you know. Anyway, so subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you subscribe, send me an email, and I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolic Facebook page, where each day I post new information on exercise, nutrition, and general health. I have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage, where current subscribers only could send me short questions about anything they read in Applied Metabolics or anything that they want answers to related to nutrition and exercise. I will answer their questions as an appreciation of their subscription. You could say it's kind of a bonus of their subscription to Applied Metabolics. So again, subscribe today, 30 to 45 pages every month. No ads, no BS, just solid evidence-based information that includes my over 60 years of constant study and experience. And if you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter and adopt a dog. They are the best. They're the best. Get one. They're the best friends you'll ever have. You'll never see loyalty and love like you do from a dog. Any dog, any breed, makes no difference. I have a preference for older dogs myself because older dogs, a lot of people reject older dogs. But older dogs, in my experience, the older dogs are the sweetest, most loving dogs you can get. Every one of them has been like that. So take care. Thank you for listening.